I didn't tell my mother what I'd been building. I didn't tell her about the contracts, the crew, the name on the side of the vans. I just said, "Okay," and hung up the phone. She had called on a Tuesday afternoon, which should have been my first sign that something was off. My mother didn't call on Tuesdays. She called on Sunday mornings, right after church, when she was still riding the feeling of having done something good. Tuesday calls meant she needed to deliver news that required a buffer, the kind of news she'd been rehearsing in the car on the way home from somewhere. "Your sister's engagement party is next Saturday," she said. "At the Hargrove Club, black tie." I already knew about the party. My sister had texted me the date 3 weeks earlier with a string of diamond ring emojis. I'd been planning to drive up from Austin on Friday night. "I know," I said. "I already have the weekend clear." There was a pause. Not a long one. Just enough to tell me the rehearsal was about to begin. "Here's the thing, sweetheart." She dropped her voice, the way she did when she was trying to sound like she was on my side. "Derek's family is very particular. His father went to Vanderbilt. His mother chairs the Symphony Gala every year. They have a certain kind of, you know how these families are." I didn't say anything. "Your sister just wants the night to go smoothly. She doesn't want anyone asking awkward questions. You know how his aunt can be. And if someone brings up what you do for work?" "What I do for work," I repeated. "It's not that there's anything wrong with it. It's just Derek's family pictures a certain kind of event. And your sister asked me to talk to you, because she didn't want to hurt your feelings." I held the phone away from my face for a second. Out my window, one of my trucks was pulling out of the yard, heading to a job site in Round Rock. My name was on the door, in black and gold letters. "She doesn't want me there," I said. My mother exhaled. "She wants you there in spirit. You'll be at the wedding. This is just the engagement party. The Hargroves are hosting it, and they have a very specific guest list. Mom. And she just thinks it would be easier for everyone, if—" "Mom, I understand." Another pause. This one felt different. A little relieved. A little guilty. "You're not upset?" I said, "I understand." I put the phone down on my workbench and stared at it for a long time after we hung up. I was 31 years old. I had 11 full-time employees. I had been running my own electrical contracting company for 4 years, and before that, I'd spent 3 years as a licensed journeyman, working every job site in Central Texas that would hire me, saving every dollar I didn't need for rent and truck payments and tools. I had calluses on both hands and a spreadsheet I updated every Sunday that told me, down to the dollar, what my company was worth. My sister thought I would embarrass her. I grew up in a house where my father worked in insurance and my mother volunteered at 3 different nonprofits, and college was discussed the way other families discussed oxygen, as something you simply needed to survive. My sister had gone to UT Austin for business. My brother had gone to Texas A&M for finance. When I told my parents at 17 that I wanted to go to trade school, that I wanted to be an electrician, my father had set down his fork at the dinner table and looked at me like I had announced something tragic. "You're smart enough for college," he said. "I know," I said. "I want to do this instead." What followed was 2 years of quiet disappointment served at every family dinner. Questions about whether I'd reconsidered. Suggestions that I could always go back to school later. My mother telling her friends I was figuring things out rather than explaining what I was actually doing, which was passing my apprenticeship exams with the highest scores in my cohort. I stopped explaining myself somewhere around age 22. It wasn't worth the energy. I let them think what they wanted, and I went to work. By 24, I was a licensed master electrician. By 26, I had my LLC. By 28, I had outgrown my first shop and moved into a bigger one. I hired my first employee, then my second, then a project manager named Carla who had 15 years of experience, and who told me on her first week that I ran the tightest operation she'd ever seen. My family knew I had a little business. That was how my mother described it at Thanksgiving. My sister once asked if I got scared working alone, and I didn't bother explaining that I hadn't worked alone in 2 years. My father, at Christmas, had said, "Just make sure you're putting something in your retirement account." I'd smiled and said I would. None of them knew the name of my company. None of them had ever asked. So when my mother called on that Tuesday afternoon and told me my sister didn't want me at her engagement party because I might embarrass her in front of the Hargroves, I said I understood. And I meant it. I understood completely. I spent that Saturday night at home in Austin, doing my books. I ordered Thai food and worked until 11 and went to bed feeling something I couldn't quite name. Not quite sad, not quite angry, just quiet. The kind of quiet that settles in when you've been carrying something for so long that you've stopped noticing the weight. My sister texted me Sunday morning. "How are you? Party was so fun. Wish you could have been there." I put my phone face down and went for a run. The next few weeks moved fast. I had a big commercial contract coming in a mixed-use development in the Mueller district. 6 stories, 42 units, retail on the ground floor. The developer had reached out through my project manager in early spring. I'd submitted the bid in March and gotten the call in April. It was the largest contract I'd signed since I started the company. The developer's name was Hargrove Properties. I want to be honest about this. I didn't put it together right away. Hargrove is not an uncommon name. I was focused on the scope of work, the timeline, the materials costs. I went to the first site meeting and shook hands with the project lead, a woman named Patricia, who was sharp and direct and knew every inch of the drawings. We got along immediately. It was at the third meeting, in early May, that the owner came to the site. He was tall, silver-haired, the kind of man who had been wearing business casual his whole life and had it perfected. He walked the site with his hands in his pockets, asking questions that were specific enough to tell you he'd built things before. Patricia introduced us. "This is the electrical contractor," she said. "She's been ahead of schedule since week 1. He shook my hand. "Hargrove," he said. "Good to meet you." I looked at him. "Is your son named Derek?" I asked. He smiled. "He is. You know him?" "He's marrying my sister," I said. The look on his face was something I won't forget. Genuine surprise, and then something that shifted behind his eyes. He glanced at Patricia, and then back at me. "You're Melissa's sister." "I am. Melissa talks about her family," he said, carefully. I nodded. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Hargrove." We finished the site walk. He asked good questions. I gave him straight answers. Before he left, he stopped and turned back to me. "I heard about the engagement party," he said. "I want you to know, that wasn't our doing." I looked at him. I believed him. But I also didn't need his apology, and I think he could tell, because he nodded once and got in his car. I drove back to the shop and sat in the parking lot for a while. I thought about my sister, who had sent me a photo of her engagement ring the morning after Derek proposed. I thought about my mother, rehearsing in her car. I thought about my father and his retirement account advice. I thought about 16 years of Sunday phone calls and holiday dinners where my job was described as something people do when they're still figuring things out. Then I went inside and told Carla we were on track for a 2-week early completion. She raised an eyebrow. "How?" "We're going to run the 3rd floor panel this weekend," I said. "I'll be on site Saturday." "You sure?" "Yeah," I said. "I need something to do on Saturday." The wedding was in September. My sister had asked me to be a bridesmaid, which I took as confirmation that she had felt at least somewhat guilty about the engagement party. I bought the dress she picked out, dusty rose, floor length, and I had it altered, and I showed up to the bridal shower in June, and smiled, and helped her open gifts and ate the little sandwiches with the crusts cut off. She never mentioned the engagement party. I never brought it up. What I noticed, though, was that she started asking different questions. Not how's work with that particular breezy quality that meant she didn't actually want to know. More specific things. She asked once, while we were waiting for our nails to dry at her bachelorette weekend in Fredericksburg, whether I liked running a business or whether it felt like too much. I told her I liked it. I told her it was a lot some weeks, but that I'd built something I was proud of. She looked at me for a moment. Derek's dad told him, "You're doing their Mueller project." "I am." She was quiet for a second. "How come you never told us?" I looked at my nails. The color was called ballet slipper. "No one ever asked," I said. She didn't have an answer for that. I didn't push it. The rehearsal dinner was at a restaurant in downtown Austin, a steakhouse that had been there since 1987 and had the kind of lighting that made everyone look like they were in a movie. I sat between my brother's wife and one of Derek's cousins, a woman named Grace who worked in hospital administration in Nashville. Grace was easy to talk to, We ended up staying at the bar for an hour after most people had gone home. Derek's mother found me before I left. She was small and precise, the kind of woman who had a plan for every social situation she'd ever walked into. She introduced herself, we shook hands, and she said something I hadn't expected. "My husband speaks very highly of your work," she said. "He said you're the best contractor he's worked with in years." I thanked her. "I also want to apologize," she said, "for the engagement party." I looked at her. "You don't need to." "I'd like to." She held my gaze. "That was handled badly." Derek was embarrassed about it afterward, and he should have been. I was embarrassed. Whatever impression you were given about how we see your family, that isn't us. And it certainly isn't how we see you. I thought about my mother on the phone. "Your sister just wants the night to go smoothly." "Thank you," I said. "I appreciate that." She nodded, the way people nod when they mean what they've said and don't need to fill the space after it. The wedding was on a Saturday in late September, at a vineyard outside Fredericksburg. The kind of place where the light turns gold at 4 in the afternoon and everything looks soft. My sister was beautiful. She cried when my father walked her down the aisle, and he cried too, and I stood in my dusty rose dress holding her bouquet and felt, for the first time in a long time, like maybe we were all going to be okay. At the reception, I was seated at the head table with the wedding party. My father found me before dinner and hugged me for longer than he usually did. "Derek's father called me last week," he said. "Did he?" "He told me what you've built." He pulled back and looked at me. His eyes were a little red. "I didn't know." "I know you didn't. I should have asked." I looked at him. My father, who had set down his fork 22 years ago with that particular expression. He was 64 now, and he looked it, and he looked sorry. "Yeah," I said. "You should have." We didn't hug again. We didn't need to. He went back to his table, and I went to mine. Dinner was good. The speeches were funny. My sister danced with Derek the way you dance when you forget other people are watching, and that was the best part. I was standing near the barn doors with a glass of wine when my mother came to find me. It was past 9. The string lights were on. The band was playing something from the 90s. "Your sister told me about the Mueller project," she said. "Did she? Why didn't you tell us?" I took a sip of wine. "I've been doing this work for 9 years, Mom. The company's been running for 4. I've told you things. You didn't ask follow-up questions." She looked down at her glass. "I think I was embarrassed," she said. "And that's—" She stopped. "That's not an excuse. I was embarrassed because I didn't understand it, and I didn't try to understand it, and I'm sorry for that." My mother apologizing is not a common event. She tends to move sideways around guilt rather than straight through it. This was straight through it, and it cost her something, and I could see that. "I know," I said. "Are you okay?" I thought about the shop, the trucks, the spreadsheet I updated every Sunday. Carla, who had 15 years of experience, and who had told me last month that she was planning to stay as long as I'd have her. The Mueller project, which was going to finish 3 weeks ahead of schedule. The 2 new bids I had out that I was quietly confident about. "I'm really okay," I said. She nodded. She looked like she wanted to say more, and I let her decide not to. The band started something slow. Across the room, my sister caught my eye and held up her glass and smiled, and I held mine up too. My phone buzzed in my clutch. A text from Carla. "Inspector signed off on floors 3 and 4. We're golden." I smiled at my phone, and then I put it away, and I went to dance. I want to be clear about something, because I think it matters. I didn't plan any of this. I didn't know when I took the Hargrove Properties contract that the developer was going to be my sister's future father-in-law. I didn't engineer the moment on the job site. I didn't call anyone. I didn't say anything to create a situation. I just did my job, the same way I'd been doing it for 9 years. And the situation created itself. That's the thing no one tells you about working with your hands, about building something from nothing in an industry that looks at you sideways because you're a woman, or because you didn't go to college, or because your family describes what you do as figuring things out. The work speaks. Eventually, consistently, louder than anyone else in the room. The work just speaks. I drove home to Austin on Sunday morning, windows down, coffee in the cup holder. The hill country was still green from the September rain. I had a new playlist I'd been saving for a long road drive and I put it on and turned it up. On Monday, I was back at the shop at 7. Carla had coffee ready. She looked up when I came in. "How was the wedding?" "Good," I said. "Really good. How's the family?" I thought about my father's red eyes. My mother, straight through the guilt for once. My sister dancing with her new husband in the gold September light. "Getting there," I said. Carla handed me a coffee and slid a folder across the counter. New bid request came in Friday afternoon. Commercial build in Georgetown. Big one. I sat down and opened the folder. "What are we looking at?" "Mixed use. 8 stories. The developer's out of Dallas." She paused. "They asked for us specifically. Said they heard about Mueller." I looked up at her. She was grinning. Word travels. I looked back down at the folder. Outside, through the shop window, I could see the trucks lined up in the yard. My name on every door in black and gold letters. I picked up a pen. "Let's put together a number," I said.